Before we start tonight's episode, I want to start with a verse. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. 1 Peter 5:8. And before we step into tonight's story, I need to give a serious warning. This video was created strictly for educational and documentary purposes. Tonight's episode will contain discussions of violence, murder, mental health, disturbing events, trigger warnings, and viewers may find disturbing. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. And if you are struggling with depression, hopelessness, addiction, self-harm, or suicidal thoughts, please know your story matters. Your life has value. You are not forgotten. I've placed the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline information in the description below. Please reach out to somebody. Don't suffer in silence. Good evening, everybody. My name is William Purvis, and welcome to the Jebediah Calvin Myers YouTube channel. And welcome back to Shadows Over America. First off, I want to thank anyone and everyone who watched episode 1 and left comments. One viewer specifically requested that I cover the Virginia Tech massacre. So tonight, that's exactly what we're going to do. Some tragedies shock a community. Some tragedies shock a nation. But every once in a while, a tragedy occurs that changes the way an entire country looks at safety, mental health, higher education, and public violence forever. April 16th, 2007. What started as a normal Monday morning on the campus of Virginia Tech would become one of the deadliest school shootings in American history. Students woke up expecting classes, professors prepared lectures, parents expected phone calls later that evening. Nobody knew that before the day was over, dozens of innocent lives would be lost. Tonight, we are not here to glorify a killer. We are not here to sensationalize violence. We are here to remember the victims, to understand what happened, to examine the warning signs, and to learn how one horrifying day forever changed America. We'll explore the life and background of the shooter. We'll examine the timeline of the attack. We'll discuss the aftermath. And we'll look at the lasting impact this tragedy left on families, survivors, and the nation as a whole. Because sometimes history isn't just something we read about. Sometimes it's a warning, so dim the lights, lock the doors, and step carefully into the shadows with me. This is Shadows Over America. April 16th, 2007. It was a Monday morning at Virginia Tech in Blacksburg. Students were heading to class. Professors were preparing lectures. Some were studying for upcoming exams. Others were grabbing breakfast before starting their day. Like every college campus across America, life felt ordinary. And that's what makes this story so haunting. Nobody wakes up expecting a tragedy. Nobody says goodbye to their friends thinking it may be the last time. Nobody walks into a classroom expecting history to change forever. At approximately 7:15 that morning, the first attack occurred inside West Ambler Johnson Hall, a student residence building on campus. 2 students have lost their lives. At the time, many people believed the incident was isolated. Classes continued, students continued moving across campus, and few could have imagined what would happen next. Hours later, events took a far darker turn. The attacker made his way toward Norris Hall, an academic building where students and professors were gathering for morning classes. What would become the most deadliest act of mass violence ever committed on a college campus in the United States. Inside Norris Hall, students and faculty suddenly found themselves trapped in an unimaginable nightmare. Some professors attempt to block doors, others helped students escape through windows. Students called loved ones, some sent text messages that would become their final communications. Others helped classmates despite the danger surrounding them. In the midst of unimaginable fear, there were also extraordinary acts of courage. One of the most remembered heroes from that day was Levu Librescu, a professor and Holocaust survivor. As danger approached his classroom, Librescu reportedly used his body to help hold a door shut, giving students precious seconds to escape through the windows. Many of students survived because of his actions. Another professor remembered for his extraordinary bravery was Kevin Granada, who lost his life while attempting to help others. Throughout Norris Hall, stories of courage emerged alongside tragedy. Students helped wounded classmates. Professors protected their students. Emergency responders rushed toward danger instead of away from it. By the time the violence ended, 32 victims had been killed and many others injured. The loss was devastated, and it devastated families across multiple states and countries. The victims were students, professors, researchers, sons, daughters, brothers, sisters, friends, and mentors. They came from different backgrounds, different cultures, different walks of life, yet all of them shared one thing in common. They should have been able to return home that day. News of the tragedy spread rapidly across America. Parents desperately tried contacting their children. TV stations interrupted programming. The nation watched in disbelief as details continued to emerge from the campus. For the student who survived, life would never be quite the same. For the families who lost loved ones, the pain would last far beyond the headlines. And for America, questions were already beginning to form. Questions about communication, questions about warning signs, questions about campus security. Questions that would reshape conversations for years to come. But before we can understand how this tragedy changed America, we first have to understand the decisions, missed opportunities, and warning signs that led to that terrible day. When the violence finally ended at Virginia Tech, the grief began. Families waited for answers. Students tried to process what they had witnessed. And America was left asking one overwhelming question: how did this happen? In the days and weeks that followed, investigators, journalists, university officials, and lawmakers began examining every detail leading up to the April 16, 2007 massacre. Not because there was a way to undo the tragedy, but because understanding what happened might help prevent another one. One of the first questions involved warning signs. Investigators discovered that the attacker had a history of concerning behavior that had attracted attention years before the attack. There had been reports of disturbing conduct. There had been concerns raised by professors. There had been encounters with mental health professionals. And there had been moments when people recognized that something was wrong. Yet the challenge was understanding what those warning signs meant, and whether anyone could have predicted the scale of what would eventually occur. This remains one of the most difficult questions in cases like this. Many people struggle with mental health challenges every day and never commit acts of violence. Warning signs alone do not tell the future. But the Virginia Tech tragedy led schools, universities, and government agencies across America to take a much closer look at how concerning behaviors are identified, reported, and addressed. Another major question centered on communication. After the first attack that morning, there was a delay before a campus-wide warning was sent. University officials forced criticism from some families of students and investigators who believed faster communication may have helped people make different decisions about attending classes or remaining in certain areas. The discussion sparked a nationwide conversation. How quickly should schools notify students during emergencies? What information should be shared? How can campus warn thousands of people within minutes? These questions would lead to major changes across colleges and universities throughout the United States. Mass text alerts become more common. Emergency notification systems expanded. Universities began investing heavily in rapid communication technology. The tragedy also changed how colleges approach campus safety. Schools developed emergency response plans. Students became familiar with lockdown procedures. Faculty received additional training for crisis situations. Law enforcement agencies improved on coordination for active threat responses. Many of the safety practices now common on college campuses can trace part of their origin back to the lessons learned from Virginia Tech. But beyond policies and procedures, there was another lesson, a human lesson, one that often gets overlooked. The victims were not headlines. They were people, students chasing dreams, professors dedicating their lives to education, parents raising families, friends building futures. The names lost that day represented lives filled with potential, talent, and purpose. And while America often remembers the tragedy itself, the families remember birthdays that never come, graduations that never happened, phone calls that were never made. The true cost of violence cannot be measured by statistics. It is measured by empty seats at dinner tables, and the reality continues long after the cameras leave. As the years passed, Virginia Tech became more than a crime scene. It became a lesson, a warning, and a reminder that vigilance, compassion, communication, and community matter. But even after the investigations ended and the reports were published, one question remained. How did this tragedy change America? And nearly 2 decades later, the answer is still unfolding. April 16, 2007. For the families of the victims, that date never ended. For survivors, the memories never completely disappeared. And for America, Virginia Tech became a turning point. When most people think about the tragedy today, they often remember the headlines, the breaking news alerts, the images of students evacuating campus, the emergency vehicles, the national mourning. The true impact of Virginia Tech goes much deeper than a single day. The tragedy changed how colleges and universities across America think about safety. Before Virginia Tech, many campuses operated with the belief that such violence was unlikely to happen there. After Virginia Tech, that belief changed. Universities invested in emergency notification systems, mass text alerts became common, campus police departments expanded training, faculty members received guidance on emergency procedures. Students learned evacuation and lockdown protocols. Across the country, schools began asking the difficult questions they'd never been asked before. Are we prepared? What if the unthinkable occurs? Virginia Tech forced institutions to confront those questions. The tragedy also changed conversations surrounding mental health. Many colleges expanded counseling services. Universities developed behavioral intervention teams designed to identify students in crisis and connect them with support. The goal wasn't simply responding to emergencies, it was recognizing struggles before they became tragedies. Another lasting impact was the way Americans viewed campus communities. The attack showed that tragedy can affect people from every background imaginable. The victims came from different states, different countries, different cultures, yet they were united by one campus and shared loss. In the days that followed, people across the world mourned alongside Virginia Tech. Memorials appeared, candles were lit, messages of support arrived from every corner of the globe, and through that grief emerged something powerful: unity. Tonight we looked back at one of the darkest days in modern American history. Not to glorify violence, not to make monsters into legends, but to remember the lives forever changed by tragedy and to understand the warnings history leaves behind. To the victims, the survivors, the families, and everyone still carrying the scars of the Virginia Tech massacre, this story is remembered with respect. I'm William Purvis. Tonight has been another chapter in Shadows Over America, and I'll see you guys next time.